Happy Friday, everybody.
Happy Friday.
Happy
And,
Friday!
and welcome to the Back Catalog Listening Party. My name is Mother Banjo, one of your hosts.
My name is Anthony Ihrig, the other host.
And today we have joining us from Chicago, Heather Styka.
Ooh.
That's right. People are feeling good this day after Thanksgiving. Well, I don't know if they're all feeling good, but we're going to
They
recover
sound like
together, right?
Yeah.
I got the stretchy pants on. I don't know about you all. Make way for some more leftovers. And Connie joining us from Richfield. Hi, Connie.
Hey,
Nice
Connie.
to see you. You all can let us know where you're joining us from and if you're enjoying any kind of beverage or leftovers, as the case may be. I am having a nice Irish cream coffee right now. I'm getting cozy. And
Excellent.
Tony, are you enjoying anything?
Just recovering from a little bout of the illness, so I'm going with the little fancy Italian water here today. Bubbly.
Nice.
Excellent.
And Heather?
This is a recently acquired holiday tea from Harney and Sons.
Oh, I love Harney and Sons from
Yeah.
Connecticut, from my home state of Connecticut.
Really? It's so fancy. I assumed it was even British or something. Harney and Sons.
Connecticut. It's pretty close.
And
fancy.
New England. Yeah.
New England,
right.
yeah.
And Chris is back from a crazy World Cup watch party at Udapils Brewing. Nice. And
Hey,
looking
Chris.
forward to now. Well, yeah, I'm looking forward to now too. Luckily it's
too.
here. And checking in from Whitewater State Park. Nice, Joe.
Hey, Joe. All right.
And yeah, thank you for joining us today on this day after Thanksgiving. And I can't think of a better way to continue the holiday relaxation than by kicking back with our good friend Heather Styka. And Heather, I recently saw you a couple weeks ago at the Folk Alliance Regional Midwest Conference. So that was a real treat to see you in person. I used to see you like once or twice a year at those conferences, and now it's been like years. So it's great to have you here joining us. And for folks who maybe aren't as familiar with your music as I am, maybe you could give a brief little bio, where you grew up, and how you started playing music, and what brought you to this record that we're going to revisit today.
Sure. I grew up near Chicago, suburbs of, and sort of fell into the folk scene via an open mic when I was like 12, 13. I snuck into a high school, college age open mic in like 8th grade and was trying to figure out, where my songs were going to go. And then I found folk, and it was like, oh, some of this is pretty, some of these are good songs. I had to be talked into a lot of it. But then the more I hung out in the community, Chicago is such a hotbed for it, or at least has such a strong history of it as well. So I was sort of putting along in folk obscurity, playing out a lot as I went to school here. And right in the years after I graduated with a very, very useful English degree. You know how English degrees are.
I have a
especially
literature degree.
Yeah. I focused in creative writing, so I'm even more employable than you if you think about it. I decided that I would just take a year and do music. And then that year, turned into 10 plus. More than that. But in the midst of that, I had always been rooted in Chicago, some touring, some folk conferences, making my way more nationally. And I had this crisis of self that made me break up with my partner in Chicago, move to Maine. I was like, I need the ocean. I'm out. And in the midst of all that, I wrote this album. So this one's very special to me because of that, because it was the turning point where I went from sort of following the genius of folk community here and open mic community and songwriter community, and then just sort of branching off into my cabin days.
Excellent. Well, we can't wait to dive into this record. And I always have to make sure I get the title right. While This Planet Spins Beneath Our Feet is the name of the title. And it came out in 2014. And the first track that you picked to feature on today's show is Long Spring. Is there anything you want to say about the song before we take a listen?
It basically what I just told you is the bio on this one. It's it's the opening track, and it's my little manifesto of hey, I'm gonna leave now and I'm gonna go somewhere different in Maine, and you're gonna have to deal with that. So,
All right. Well, let's give it a spin. This is Heather Styka with Long Spring here on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
It was the longest of springs and the latest of summers, lilac and honeysuckle clinging to the branch, fragrant through the rain, until late roses came. Airplanes in the sky were small white birds gliding steadily. I watched the paint peel from the front porch. I thought of you momentarily, somewhat warily. I live on the north side of the West End these days. I am so sorry. My heart is happy while you are 1,000 miles away. You said you'd hoped the ocean would fill me with all of the joy you couldn't bring. And I'm sorry, you're right. I'm sorry I'm gone. It's been a long spring. I was a series of tempests when I lived beside you. Held on tight while I raged and rained and finally blew away. Oh, I couldn't have stayed. Now I hear the train rumble past in the early morning. I leave my windows open. A breeze smells of a storm from the night before, soft and settled once more. I live on the north side of the West End these days. I am so sorry. My heart is happy while you are 1,000 miles away. You said you'd hoped the ocean would fill me with all of the joy you couldn't bring. I'm sorry, you're right. I'm sorry I'm gone. It's been a long spring. How many years did I believe there had to be something wrong with me, pulling away from all that I thought I'd ever need? You came too soon, love wasn't enough to fill in the cracks, to smooth out the rough. That much is on me, it's my puzzle to solve. I had to leave you to find me. I have the fullest of hearts, always brimming over. I watch the tides, I let my thoughts wash over me like waves upon stone. When I am alone, for all that you could give me, you couldn't give this. The feeling I can stand out in the storm all on my own and still feel I'm home.
Heather Styka with Long Spring from her 2014 album While This Planet Spins Beneath Our Feet. Beautiful tune, Heather, and I love the way the bass and the organ just kind of sneaks in, and
Yeah,
it's not too, like, it's treading lightly. You could easily have
Yeah.
had those same instruments and it would be like big. You know what I mean?
Well,
Mhm.
And I
at one point I was like, is that an organ?
Or is
I mean,
it?
it was so subtle at the very beginning. I mean, it was so subtle, and then it grew and it grew with the song, and that was really, really interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. That's it's I'm glad you mentioned that because I was working really closely with Beehive Productions who recorded that, and they had their place in Saranac Lake, and I'm always one of those. Oh no, we're not really frozen, are we? Can you see
We
me?
can
No.
see. We
Okay,
can
you were
see you.
frozen for a moment,
Okay.
but I wasn't. I was
Yeah,
like,
we can
no,
see
don't
you.
be gone. They with working with Jeff, it's always like, okay, well, let's have a little bit less space. Can I have less percussion? I was just always this like allergic to production person. But then coming into like his studio and allowing to have the space to sort of do my own thing with it, I got to play this beautiful Hammond B3 on it. And it was like,
Mm.
okay, how can I do this without ever stepping on the song? Like, that's my whole thing. And so it was just like weeks of hanging out in freezing cold upper New York, like playing around with the Hammond until it was subtle enough.
Oh, nice. It was very subtle. That was you on it then, eh?
Yeah, that was
Nice.
me. Which I
Excellent.
don't usually get to have a side career as a Hammond player, but
Awesome. Well,
And
sounded great.
who was playing bass on that?
Jason Rafalek. These days he's in Buffalo Rose. I met him when he was playing with Brad Yoder a bunch, and he used to go to like Folk Alliance conferences. I mean, he still does, but him and Brad would host these like musical chairs sessions where he would just pop in. You probably remember that.
I probably played with him and didn't remember. Yeah.
Right. And he would just like hop in no matter who was in the round. He would just like start sneaking in. I mean, almost like it is on the record where like, okay, the song is happening, and before you know it, this like perfect bass line is being played behind you subtly and without even knowing how it arrived. It's like magic every time. And so when it came down to it, I was like, I know who I want. I must have Jason. And he's in Pittsburgh.
Have him creep into my song.
Yeah. I need him to creep on my song.
Nice.
Well, and if folks don't know, Beehive Productions, again, this great pair of people, Jeff Oler, who does all this amazing audio production and does mobile studios and live recordings, and his wife, Sue, who does video work, and they've done videos for like NPR Music and Folk Alley, and they actually did my last record, but they brought their mobile studio out to Minnesota, to the Sheldon Theater in Red Wing. But they're great people. If you ever get a chance to work with Beehive Productions, they're awesome people, and Jeff has incredible audio ears. I don't know how he's able to do what he does. He's really interested in authentic live roots recordings. So he likes live recording, but it like in spaces. But what's interesting is he doesn't usually isolate a lot of people. So it's like he has to do all this magic with like, if he has to fix something, and he's able to. I don't know how he does it, but genius.
Yeah, he's done some crazy EQ stuff, some of it which will come up on this record, where I was like, I need less cowbell. You need to fix it. And then it was like, well, there's only so much we can do. Like, we recorded this in a room together, but he like miraculously, well, that's a story for a later song.
So that was the case though for you as well, just playing your guitar and the bass player playing with you, and
as much live as possible. Some stuff, I think that one we might have tracked separately, but maybe not. I actually did a subsequent record with them where they brought their mobile studio to northern Wisconsin, where my family has a cabin near Rhinelander, was probably the closest large town, not too far from the UP. And they brought in the band from Denmark, the backing band called the Sentimentals. And those guys who have worked with like everybody just like swooped in, and Jeff and Sue swooped in with their gear and just set up shop in our little log cabin, and we got to record. So that record's called North. I'm really proud of that one. But this one was like sort of a predecessor to that, and like getting to sort of play around with like, okay, if I just get to sit in a room with someone with really great ears, what would I do?
Yeah.
Can you describe the room? I'm just because I did see like video of Ellen's recording, and I was surprised at the way they use the space as part of the recording. So now that I'm tuning into the space, I would love to. Could you describe where you were recording?
For this one, we had they had this house in Saranac Lake, and the thing about Saranac Lake is that it was historically a like sanitarium for people with tuberculosis. Like, I mean, like everyone came there to get cured by the cold air, which sort of arrested the bacteria. And as soon as penicillin was invented, no one really needed to go to Saranac Lake anymore, unless you want good skiing and scenic views. So you can like look out the window there and see the lake below and all of these beautiful homes sort of on this terraced slope. And all of them have these balconies, like air parlors, where they would have people on beds.
Oh, wow.
With windows.
Breathing the air.
Breathing the air, yeah.
Okay.
So this was in like a parlor space that's just really long. And we baffled up some of the windows, but if I remember correctly, like you could still really see out a lot. I mean, not your typical studio space where you feel like you're in like a quilt cave. None of that. None of that. It's like, oh, hello, beautiful view. Hello, windows. Hello, porch. Like, how am I recording on a porch? But yeah, just a big long room, drum kit at one end, bass in the middle, and then me tucked away with a piano and sometimes guitar.
Nice. Well, we can all listen for the space now during the next track.
Yeah. And speaking of the next track you picked is Careful with My Heart. Is there anything you want to say about this?
I won't go into too many details to protect the innocent. But I wrote this about like another musician in the folk community, and like so many years ago. I mean, it's been like well over a decade since I even thought about them. But it's funny that like this song lives on and like percolates through the scene. But it just like it stuck around. It was one of those songs that shot into me like lightning and pretty fully formed. And I was just going to throw it away because it was like too easy to write. Like, that can't be any good. That's probably just one of those me songs. But then I played it for some friends and they were like, no, that's a keeper actually. And it turned into like kind of if there's a hit track from this one, this song is it.
Nice. Well, let's give it a listen. Heather Styka, Careful with My Heart, here on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
I'm a brave aviator in the stories that I write, a fearless lion tamer, daring it all every night. And there's nothing I won't tell when I'm behind my guitar. But when I'm standing beside you, I am careful with my heart. Yeah, when I'm standing beside you, I am careful with my heart. Oh, 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 oh. I have driven through the storm with my hands firm behind the wheel. I've not been too proud to knock on doors or beg for a meal. I'm a wholehearted chance taker, not afraid to fall apart. But when I'm standing beside you, I am careful with my heart. Yeah, when I'm standing beside you, I am careful with my heart. You can call me brave with all the risks I take. You can call me honest with the music I make. You can call me a fool, but there's one way I am smart. When I'm standing beside you, I am careful with my heart. Yeah, when I'm standing beside you, I am careful with my heart. Oh, 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 oh. Now I've slain dragons, but none wearing your clothes. With all your good intentions, all your disarming pro. So I grasp these chords like a talisman to protect against love's star. And when I'm standing beside you, I am careful with my heart. You can call me fool, but there's one way I am smart. When I'm standing beside you, I am careful with my heart.
Letting that organ ring out. That was Careful with My Heart. Heather Styka here on the Back Catalog Listening Party from her 2014 release, which we are revisiting with her today on the Back Catalog Listening Party. Heather joining us from Chicago, and that's such a great tune. And I love how you sort of, the rhythms aren't exactly predictable sometimes in that, which I really like.
Thank you.
Was that like a snap or a what was the percussion there?
Jeff is allergic to anything that's mechanized.
Okay.
And I'm allergic to, well, at the time I was allergic to drums. I was just like not having a lot of it. I mean, I knew there was going to be some. It might have factored in that, like, when I left Chicago and moved to Maine and did this like life change, the person I was leaving behind and forging a life apart from was a drummer. So that might have factored in.
Might have something to do with it. Yeah.
Maybe. But I was just like, less drums, less percussion, like bass is fine, more bass. But I just had this sort of like vision of it being like I wanted it to sound poppy as a folk song could feel, but also like precise in that way, and then also a little bit loose. So we recorded, me and Jeff and other people, just snapping over and over and over. I think eventually I talked him into doing some repeating of the snap riff, because I was like, I can't actually physically do this.
My fingers are bleeding.
It's like, I can't do it.
People have no idea how hard snapping can be in studio. I did it recently, and I was like, I'm an okay snapper. I'd never think much about it. And then I was like, I had to do it. It was just one track, but I was like, man, like by the end, you're just like, I felt like I couldn't make a sound by the end.
And to be consistent, like, it's a lot.
Well, it definitely did give it that, that backbeat, it gave you something that really, it did pop it up quite a bit. So it's interesting how just, minimal it can be to give you that feel, just, between the bass and the fingers. But
I
like
had
Ellen
been listening.
mentioned, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Sure. I was listening to that like collab record by Robert Plant and Alison Krauss, and I can't remember the name of that.
The first one, Raising Sand.
Raising Sand. Yeah. The percussion in that was like, this is what I want, like that, because I just wanted that like looseness and tightness together, and it's so minimalist, but it like carries, like it's palpable and also not in the way, which is a hard balance. And I don't know if we achieved that on this record, but that was my guiding star.
Nice.
Yeah. Were you gonna say something, Tony?
Oh no, I was just thinking about something very similar to that, and it's interesting to hear that was actually your philosophy going in to the record, because it's sometimes less is more when it comes to this kind of stuff.
And I heard the organ on that track as well, and I heard some backing vocals. Was that you again? Were you doubling yourself?
Yep.
I was like, whoever that is blending so well with Heather. Oh, it's Heather. Heather blending with Heather. So I'm a little curious about the songs themselves, because like the two songs we just heard it sounds like we're pretty autobiographical, and it sounds like this record was made at a time when a big life change, moving to Maine, kind of forging a sort of new life, new path. And were these songs, you said they were all written in Maine, were they written pretty close together? Like, does this feel like when you hear these songs again, are you like transported back to that time?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, Careful with My Heart had been written like right prior in Chicago as I was like making that call. I had decided to move in like November, coming back from NERFA actually. and then left that next spring. So that like first spring that I was there was the long spring of the song, and it was just healthy to like settle in a new place. I mean, I'd done plenty of traveling, like touring wise, but to say like I'm gonna put my roots somewhere else was really freeing, because I had been sort of trying to write to the aesthetics of the people around me, you know, local venues, local DJs, like just trying to win everyone over. And then it was like, I'm in Maine now, I can do whatever I want. So this kind of came out of that all. But yeah,
in the files that you uploaded for prep of the show, there's an image of a looks like a lighthouse. Is this where you were staying? I'll bring it up here on the screen.
I think I put so that's like Portland Headlight. Yeah, that some of these tracks were like written hanging out on those rocks. I would like go visit there regularly because I was living in Portland the first year, and that's a 20-minute drive away from downtown Portland. Like you can just hang out and there's ocean and
nice.
A lighthouse.
So, and this definitely influences the sound, right? Like all of this geography.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. And one thing I just want to point out, especially because we're listening on the headphones, is that, again, even though this is a stripped down album, this is hardly a basic in your living room recording. Like it sounds really
good. Yeah.
Good. The vocals, every instrument is so clean. And that's what, again, Jeff at Beehive Productions really excels at. And you can hear all the nuance of those snaps. You can probably hear the windows, see the mountains when you listen to the track. So I highly recommend, if you're liking the songs you're hearing today from Heather's record, check it out, get the high res files. And she tells us that there might be a couple copies of this letterpressed, hand pressed album available. See, wow. She does that herself, folks. So she might have a couple. And if you contact her through her website, then she will try and get you one, because again, there's only a couple of these left, so they're not like available on like at the store and stuff like that.
Right. If you go to Bandcamp, if you go to anywhere where my music exists, it will say as if there are no more left. There are a handful in the basement, but like I'm probably down to the last dozen or less. And there won't be any more, because I was living in a cabin. Like the one you see in front of you was like on the printing press. We ran it through with, there's this like 1906, I think, hand cranked letterpress. So every single case, you know, a few thousand of these were assembled by me.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Handcrafted.
Yes. I was living in, my friend Putnam Smith had this cabin in Durham, Maine, and had a print shop across the way. And so he taught me how to letterpress and let me use it. And when you say you're pressing an album, usually you mean vinyl, but I pressed a CD, so there.
That's amazing. Yeah, and just a few left. So what would be the best way for folks to get their hands on?
If you would like a limited edition, a handful of the few that exist, I don't want them to officially say that they exist out there, because there's just that few. But message me. And just go to heatherstyka.com. There's a little contact button. Send me an email. Say, hey, I would love a copy of While This Planet Spins Beneath Your Feet. And then, you know, however you want to pay for it, PayPal, Venmo, check. I'll do it all. But we'll exchange information and make it a little more personal that way, because I don't want them to run out on Bandcamp and have people be disappointed that they don't exist anymore.
Right. So get them while you can, folks. You're hearing it here for some back catalog. Like she's not even advertising she has these available. So this is your chance to get them.
It's a back catalog exclusive.
And we know some of our regulars are building up quite the library of all of our past guests. So this would be a great one to add to it. Or, you know, the holidays are coming up. You can give it to someone else too.
Right. Well, it's like two pieces of art, right? You got this hand-pressed CD case too.
Well, and there's like a little booklet in there that, and this, like, there's it's letterpressed on the inside. This is a quote from the record. And then I glued in these beautiful booklets that Sue had put together. And I just love like going through this. Like I'm most proud of the packaging of this album of anything I've ever done. Maybe more than the songs even. Like it was my little art.
Well, those are long winters in Maine, you know? You have to fill up the time.
And you're talking to album people here. We get it. You know, there's something special about the whole thing, you know, all that, you know, the collection of songs.
And are the lyrics in that booklet too?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I know there's, in fact, Joe was commenting on he said the lyrics of all the songs on the album are solid and honest, really strong. And so if you want to sort of dig into the lyrical content a little bit more, this is a great way to do that. And Joni also had an interesting comment. She said, would be so great to hear songs created around the amazing story of that lake area. Saranac Lake is what Heather was talking about, where she recorded the album, and the sanitarium during tuberculosis. Something so haunting about that story and the landscape. And yeah, I have to ask, while you were up there, did you write any songs while you were in Saranac Lake?
I'm trying to think if I did. I don't think that any... well, we were working so hard every time I was there.
I know. I mean, it's a weird time to write, but I figured I should ask because you probably made a couple visits up there. So
we did, yeah. Well, and over the years, well, they're not actually based there anymore, but over the years, I spent a lot of time there, and I really fell in love with that area. But I haven't written anything from it. I guess I haven't figured out like what my in would be. Like, would I as the singer of the song be a patient there? Like, I don't even think I could wrap my head around that, but maybe, you know, you just wonder like, where does this story fit for me, you know? But that is a good idea. That is a very good idea.
The creative writing degree is
the wheels are turning. Yes. Yeah.
Well, you know, that brings up an interesting point. Again, we were talking about sort of the autobiographical quality of this particular collection of songs on this album because of when you wrote them and what was going on in your life. But is that sort of normally how you approach writing? Do you sort of have to find kind of your own personal way in, even if it's not an autobiographical song?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times, well, when I was studying creative writing at DePaul and focusing especially on poetry, my favorite thing to do when I'd like get in my own head and didn't want to say anything more about myself, you know, I end up writing these songs or these poems that were not technically about me. They were very much from the perspective of another individual or another story. But like by the time I'd finish it, it was like so clear that it was mine anyway, you know? And I love like being able to sort of express a personal feeling through someone else's story. And for me, I can't tell a story unless I can find that door to like my own kernel of truth. I would never touch someone else's story that's theirs unless I can find the tiny
tap
door
into
in.
it.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Interesting. Well, we're gonna dig into some more music here because I want to hear more music. Emily is the next track. Speaking of another person's story, do you want to tell us who Emily is, or?
You know, I don't think I've ever come out and specifically said which Emily. I wrote it for a couple Emilys who I knew at the time. I have a number of great Emilys in my life, but I was particularly thinking of my friend Emily Hurd and an honorary Emily named Michelle. Shout out to Michelle if you're out there. Emily had just experienced the death of her father, and within that like year, there were people. I don't even know them, but she had mentioned that some people were like, well, don't you think you've grieved long enough? You know, maybe like get back in the saddle kind of a thing. And so I wrote this thinking like, you take whatever time you need to deal with whatever you're dealing with, like however long that takes for you. And so for Emily and all the other honorary Emilys, it's really just about like, whatever you're grieving, whatever you're going through, if you need to keep playing the same sad song over and over and over and over for 3 hours, like I will sit with you while that happens. And if you need somebody to walk you home, like I'm your girl. So it's a sort of a friendship song.
All right. This is Emily from Heather Styka here on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
other. Oh, while this planet spins beneath our feet. Emily, sometimes it seems the horizon's too far, but it's never more than a handful of miles from wherever we are. We're all just walking each other home while this planet spins beneath our feet. Emily, don't hitch your wagon to an undeserving star. You've waited so long, saving your secrets inside a mason jar. And I know that you know you're more than enough. But if you ever need a reminder, let this song repeat until you believe. We're all just walking each other home while this planet spins beneath our feet. This planet spins beneath our feet.
Emily by Heather Styka here on the Back Catalog Listening Party from her 2014 release, which we are revisiting today on the show. If you are new to the show, this is the show where we invite different guest artists to revisit old records with us and make them listen to their own music. It's a special kind of torture that we like to provide for our guests. And if you have any comments or questions for Heather as we go along today, throw them in the comments. Let us know where you're tuned in from, and we'll try and answer as many as we can. And I did notice earlier you said you were allergic to drums at the time that you were making this record, but I have to say I'm pretty sure those weren't
Those
snaps
were drums
on that one.
Yeah, no, those were drums. Yeah, we got in this Kyle Murray. He's a jazz-ish guy, but he played with all kinds of different groups, and like a local Saranac Lake person that Jeff had recommended. And he definitely did play drums. It was a very simple kit, and there are a number of songs on the album that have it palpably. And for that one, I was like, I want this to be an unmistakably waltzy waltz. Like, this is just a waltz. Like, I think at the time I was probably thinking about Elliott Smith, like Waltz Number 2. That was probably the sort of guiding star in my head for that one. But I like a straightforward waltz so much. And a lot of my songs are like secret waltzes. I write so many waltzes. I think a lot of times it's because I'm writing as I'm like walking down the street in Chicago or wherever I am, and I sort of walk in 3/4 time. It ends up getting in my head that way. But that one, we just leaned into the classic waltz vibe.
Well, it's funny you say that, because of course I heard that it was a waltz. The 1, 2, 3 is unmistakable, as you said, but it also felt like oddly, like a march, like, and it could almost be like either a funeral march in this case, or like or trying to like march on with your life. Like, I really had this
your
feeling
arm
of
around
like,
your friend.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it had that feel to me, which felt really kind of comforting too. And maybe that's why it worked for that song, is having like waltzes do feel comforting somehow. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and there's, I think, well, the line, we're all just walking each other home, was actually taken from, I think Ram Dass actually said it. For a while I was attributing to the poet Rumi, and I'm pretty sure it was actually Ram Dass, but it struck me, we're all just walking each other home. I loved that idea. And the rest of it, while this planet spins beneath our feet, happened to be the rest of the name of the title of the record, but it's a song about like walking along beside someone, and for me that's a very waltz behavior, but also like a little bit of a march. Yeah, so it's just like that steady walking. It's a steady walking song.
Yeah, I like it.
Nice.
And Joni said she could picture people waltzing around a cavernous room, and I can definitely feel that. And so these songs written in Maine, recorded in upstate New York, but obviously you found your way back to Chicago now. I don't know how many years you've been back in Chicago, but you are working on a new record right now. Is that right?
I am indeed. And this one, we're going to be doing in Chicago. My friend Joe George has a studio up the street, and we've been sort of picking away at it. And this one will not be drum allergic. I'm not sure what it will be, but it definitely, well, the last record with the Sentimentals was a little bit more of a full band sound, still very folk Americana, but a little more full band. And the farther I get into things, the less constrained I feel as a musician. So I have no idea what this new record's going to be. Like, I could have any instrumentation on it and I wouldn't be against it. I used to be a bit of a purist, and I think it was just from growing up in the folk community. It was like, oh no, let's put the song first, which I agree with wholly, but I realize now that there are ways to have like fully produced, lush, crazy production and also put the song first. So who knows? We'll see what comes up, but we're working on it.
Well, that sounds great, and it is interesting that again the some of the records we've talked about, like this one, recorded in Saranac Lake. You mentioned the one you recorded with the Sentimentals in northern Wisconsin at your family cabin, and this one will be in Chicago. So
Yep.
It is interesting that each one has a sort of different flavor based on where you're recording it. So I can't wait to hear what comes up with that, what you come up with. And you can keep tabs on Heather's music. You can go to her website, heatherstyka.com. You can find tour dates there. She is performing again out in the world. So you can check that out. And of course, again, you can pick up the record that we are talking about. Again, if you message her through her website, she can hook you up with a copy because there's only a handful left. So it's not on her store. The only way to get it is by contacting her, or you can find it on the digital places too. But again, you want the handmade artwork and full booklet with all the lyrics. Definitely.
Get them while you can.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of gigs, I'm just curious, do you perform with others, does this material, and when you're writing this stuff and arranging it, do you ever keep that in mind? Like, well, I got to be able to pull it off with just me, or I got to be able to pull it off with at least a trio.
Right.
How does that play into the writing and instrumentation, the recording?
I think from the start, I was more of a solo artist, and I've always been into like grabbing people to be, on this show or that, side people, whatever, maybe a trio. But when it comes down to touring, and for a while there, I was like coast to coast touring and doing it solo out of the back of my Prius. So it was like, the more stripped down the arrangements, the more stripped down the experience. It was just like me at folk venues doing my own little quiet thing, and house concerts and all that kind of stuff. Intimate spaces, even if they're a large room, I like an intimate space where I don't have to shout to tell the story. At the end of the day, I see myself as more of a storyteller than any other kind of musicianship. So it's always been pretty solitary. For a record, I'll come in and collaborate and do stuff, but most of these songs show up in the quiet hours on my guitar alone. And then it's really a matter of like trying to piece together how they fit in the wider world. But for this album, I think that really comes through, that these are songs that do translate to a solo performance. Maybe now I'm more comfortable with writing stuff for an ensemble. But at the time, I really was like, I am a songwriter. I do songs. I do songs about feelings, and I do them alone, and no one will get in my way.
Well, I have to say that is, I think, what people respond to when they see you perform live. Because, I first met you at one of the I don't know if it was the International or the Midwest Folk Alliance, but although you are a solitary singer songwriter, and that's how you have approached your career. And that's how a lot of folkies do, right?
Right.
But then you see, we come together for these conferences or festivals, and it's like people are so excited to like see other humans because they've been driving alone in their cars, and then they're like, oh, and you of course are such an outgoing, sociable person, and you're chatting in the hall, and then like the next thing I knew, I hear this voice coming down the hall, and this is like one of those Folk Alliance hotels where it's like every hotel room there's some singer songwriter performing. People, the hallways are crowded with like double basses and accordions and what all, and you're like trying to find your way into a hotel bedroom, and to hear a singer songwriter. And I just remember hearing this voice amidst that whole hullabaloo. So you're talking about not having to shout your songs, but I have to say your voice shut people up, and I think that is something that's really special, is like when someone who's just singing their songs then can make just that alone can carry the day above all the noise. I think says a lot. And you might not tour with people, but you are the queen of getting people to play with you. So it wasn't just that bass player you were talking about. I mean, like, I've seen you at Vocalizes. You're like, oh, come play with me, come sing. I'll get the whole room to sing with me on this song.
Yeah.
And I just think that's a wonderful quality of your work, that you can do that, because you don't need a band if you can really rope in everyone along the way with you. So it's very cool to watch. So if you ever get a chance to see Heather Styka live, you should do it, because I'm telling you.
I will make you sing. It's true that
I love that.
Members will sing. It's the folk way. You're at church. You gotta sing.
In fact, I think when I saw you in Chicago and at the end of October for the Midwest Folk Alliance, it was you and your dad, who's also an active volunteer at these things. The two of you were like, you basically arm wrestled me into staying up late for a song circle, and you're like, you're gonna play. I'm like, I have to go to bed. They're like, okay, just one song and you can leave. We won't guilt you into staying, but you have to do one song. And sure enough, you gathered a whole group of people to sing songs. So Heather's a force that you can't fight. That's all I gotta say.
Like, just give me one song. Well, I mean, it has always been, it's funny that it is such a solitary career for me, because it has always been like the community that roped me into it and kept me here. When I come back to music time and time again, it's because I care about this community so much. And most of the traveling is something I do alone. But there are these intersections where you get to toss ideas back and forth and get inspired by other people in the community. And that is my happy place. It's definitely my father's happy place too. He doesn't play music, but he is obsessed with folk music and folk community. And any given night of the week, he's either at Old Town School or at another Chicago venue, Two-Way Street Coffee House, Acoustic Renaissance Concerts, which he actually runs these days. But he's always listening to music. He has a problem. He has a big problem.
He has like
that's
folk
our kind
addiction.
of problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
So is that
which
was
is convenient.
and I'm assuming that's kind of where it started for you, yeah, as a young person.
Well, that's what's funny, is that like I was writing songs before he realized that folk music was still a thing. I think he was like, oh yeah, I have this like record, and both my parents really liked the song The Dutchman, and then they realized that was by this guy Michael Smith. Oh, let's go see Michael Smith play. So they went out to Two-Way Street, which is like it's a church basement venue that is a legendary in the scene because it's been there for literally like 60 years now, and almost 60. They went in, saw the folkness, and like were like, oh well, this is kind of what Heather's been doing with like singing her own songs at the piano, like maybe we should bring her to it. And at the same time, I'm growing up getting to know folk music and performing. my dad just starts being my chaperone at these events because I'm like 18 years old and I need, 17, 18, I need someone to accompany me. And he just gets totally sucked into the community. So much so that now he runs a folk series, but like That's awesome. Just sort of found it at the same time. And honestly, he loves music more than I ever could. And it's what I do.
Well, that's very special.
Yeah.
Well, he's very proud of you. He's always like, I got to go hear my favorite daughter sing. But I do
begrudgingly.
No, it's very, very cute. The Stykas, always a treat to hang out with them. And it's a treat to have you here with us today, Heather, on the Back Catalog Listening Party. I don't know how this hour went so fast. I feel like, oh yeah, we have time. We could probably get through. Nope, we can't get through all our songs. But I think we can get to Love in the Multiverse if you want to listen to that.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Is there anything you want to say about the song?
Well, this one is a fun example. I don't want to like burden your ears with too much knowledge. But there is a little like cowbell like part in this that like kept sticking out of the mix for me. So Jeff like tweaked it. And what it ended up doing was having to sort of like alter the quality of my voice. But this is a song about time travel, kind of like alternate dimension travel. The basic concept being that like a science-backed breakup song of, well, if I haven't broken up with you in this world yet, I've definitely done it in probably most of the other multiverses. And there's another one where we're already broken apart and like you're much happier. So if you think about it that way, like I should probably go.
Amazing.
And it came to me after watching like endless episodes of Doctor Who while I was sick with the flu and like chugging the NyQuil and like just did not. And I was like, I understand. So I was deeply affected by the concept of the multiverse after too much Doctor Who and NyQuil. And this song came to be.
Wow. Science-backed breakup song. Love in the Multiverse from Heather Styka here on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
I'm capable of patience, but I don't waste time on it. 'Cause if our space and time is happening this moment, I'd admit I'm already leaving, or I've already left, or I'm already home again. The future you was having dinner somewhere with future me, and we laugh about the suckers who say things are meant to be. There were a multitude of outcomes, and there always had been. I had always loved you somewhere or somewhere. The versions where I never met you, sometimes I wonder about those. If that outcome makes you happier than this one, I suppose. Or if I left at any other point in our timeline, would you be my phantom limb with memories that are not mine? Future you is having dinner somewhere with the future me, and we laugh about the suckers who say things are meant to be. There were a multitude of outcomes, and there always have been. I had always loved you somewhere or somewhere. What happens from here, which version we're in, I can't say. But this is not the ending where I decide to stay. 'Cause my future self is sending a message back to me. Her happiness depending on me leave. Maybe I come back and find you. Maybe we love for many years. Maybe you meet another woman and I'm left alone in tears. Each hypothetical story as good as any that I know, and the only we go. There were a multitude of outcomes, and there always had been. I had always loved you somewhere or somewhere. I'm capable of patience, but I don't waste time on it. 'Cause if all space and time is happening in this moment, I'd admit I'm already leaving, or I've already left, or I'm already home again.
All right, doing some travel through the multiverse with Heather Styka, Loving the Multiverse from her 2014 album, While This Planet Spins Beneath Our Feet, which we have been revisiting today with Heather joining us from Chicago. Thank you so much, Heather, for joining us today. This has been such a treat.
Yeah, wonderful.
Sounds so
Thank
good.
you for having me. It's like you said, it's nice to be forced to listen to these. I was convinced it was a cowbell. It was a wood block. It was a wood block that was the offending percussion instrument, and it actually totally works. But
Yeah, that's
you know,
that-
10
that was
years
that-
ago,
That was that
The
thing, right?
yeah, the little doot doot. But I mean,
great.
Jeff like massaged it into place, and it all came together. That's like the fun part about making albums. Like I get so stressed out, but then afterwards you're like, oh, everything's actually where it needs to be. Never mind, all is well.
Well, this is a great sounding record, and like I said, even though it's fairly stripped down, it's like everything is so clean, and that's not true on every stripped down record. You know, sometimes it just feels naked, and this does not. This feels naked in all the right ways, and I mean, in that it feels like you're bearing your soul. You know.
Yeah.
So anyway, so if you like what you heard today, definitely check it out. Again, she has just a few copies left of the physical copy of the album with the hand pressed cover and the booklet and all the stuff. So you can get that for yourself, for a friend, for the holidays. You can message her through her website to get a copy of it because it's not available on her store. She's just offering it to back catalog folks like you. HeatherStyka.com is how you can do that. And Connie and Joe and all the folks, thank you so much for the great comments and for joining us today. If you also like what you heard, you can throw something in Heather's tip jar as well if you just want to throw a donation that way as well. Help fuel her next record and get her and her tank. She might have a Prius, but you know, still have to put some gas in that thing. So thank you so much to all of you for joining us. If you like the episode, like it on YouTube. And direct more bots to Heather Styka. And you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. We do this every week, not with Heather every week, but with other great guest artists. And and the next couple weeks, we're going to be doing some holiday albums. So you want to check that out.
It's going to be fun.
It's going to be really fun. And we want to thank all the folks that make this show possible, which is mainly our guest artists, because without them, there would be no show. So thank you, Heather. And then all of you for joining in the party and the conversation. But we have some special people who give a little every month via Patreon to keep the show going. We've been 137 episodes thanks to Penny, Ann, Alinda, Bevan, Connie, Vaughn, Alan, Chris, Alex, Becky, Galen, Peggy, Joe, Jim, Beverly, and John, Fred, Tim, Sarah, David, Jocelyn, Court, Matt, Steve, Mark, Homestead Pick and Parlor, Severin, Lynn, Jake, Mary, Many Tracks, and Nikki, and maybe you. You can join our Patreon at the link scrolling below, and you can get cool things. You'll be the first to know who our guest artists are for upcoming weeks and in the upcoming months. We also do monthly after parties, and today is one of those days. So Heather's going to join us for a special after party on Zoom. We can chat screen to screen and have another beverage and another song as well. So if you want to get in on that, you can join our Patreon. But mainly, thank you for being here, because without you, well, our week would be a little less interesting, and Tony and I would miss each other a lot more. So
yeah, listening to music together. This is really a special hour every week for us. And again, we want to thank you, Heather, for spending the hour with us and for hanging out for our after party. And once again, I'll just reiterate what Ellen said. Thank you all for being here, being part of this community and supporting independent musicians like Heather, because honestly, it makes the world a better place, and we're so grateful for you. So until next week, we'll see you here on the Back Catalog Listening Party. Cheers.
Cheers.